Picture this. It's September 6th. You're playing on your PS4 Pro, dealing with frame drops and texture pop-ins while enjoying your favorite game at 30 FPS. You've been waiting for over a year to upgrade because every online source hints that the PS5 Pro is coming out this year. But now it's September 6th, and there's still no word from Sony. Your PS4 Pro freezes once more. Frustrated, you slam your controller on the floor and say, "Fudge it, I'm heading to Best Buy to get the PS5 Slim. They have a special bundle for $400 with Spider-Man 2 included, which I've been dying to play." You get home, unbox your new console, and can't help but smell it along with the new Dualsense controller. What? We all do it, right? You set it up effortlessly, transfer your account, and watch as your games appear on the PS5. You boot up Spider-Man 2 for the first time and are awestruck. Then you try God of War Ragnarok and Forbidden West, all in 4K at 60 FPS. Over the next few days, you test all your favorite PS4 games on the PS5. You can't help but think, what an idiot I was for not buying this sooner. But then on September 26th, you wake up, grab a coffee, and with half-closed eyes scroll through YouTube. Out of nowhere, Sony drops a trailer for the new PS5 Pro at $550. It hits you. The emptiness in your stomach. It's the kind of feeling you get when you're rejected or someone pulls a prank on you. Your whole day feels ruined because you know all you needed to do was wait a bit longer. Now you're considering selling your PS5, but who would want it? Everyone's buzzing about the PS5 Pro. Maybe you could sell it for $250 and find a buyer. But then you think, fudge it, I'll keep my PS5. Yet every time you see a game running better on the PS5 Pro, that bitter taste lingers. Even after you finally upgrade, that feeling will stick around. That's you, and that's hundreds of thousands of others who didn't listen to this video. Diving deep into the latest news and leaks about the PS5 Pro, from insights shared by developers and analysts to the whispers from leakers. We'll break down the PS5 Pro's architecture, listen to what the PlayStation chief architect has to say about the future of consoles, and analyze the subtle hints he's dropped. Of course, we'll cover the specs, pricing, and release date, and whether upgrading is truly worth it. We'll also explore the games that will shine on this new hardware. Some of the information we'll discuss is fresh, while other details have been circulating for a while, but I've compiled everything into this comprehensive video, sharing what I've learned about the console over the past year. I don't expect you to take my word for it, but I do encourage you to pay close attention. I've included all the sources in the video description, so I strongly suggest you check them out for yourself. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them in the comments. The cool thing about the Pro is that it's going to bring some serious improvements, especially if you're into high-end gaming. First off, there's this new tech they're using called Spectral Super Resolution, aka PSSR. Basically, it's designed to make games look even better by upscaling the resolution. The goal with PSSR is to hit 4K at 120 FPS, but realistically, the PS5 Pro is aiming for a solid 4K at 60 FPS, which is still a big step up from the regular PS5. Performance-wise, the Pro is going to be about 45% faster at rendering, and its ray tracing capabilities will be 2 to 3 times better. If you're into graphics, the GPU upgrade is going to be comparable to something like an NVIDIA RTX 4070 Ti, so expect games to look a lot sharper. The CPU isn't changing much from the standard PS5, but the Pro will have a high-frequency mode to give it a little more oomph. Plus, it'll support advanced upscaling and anti-aliasing, so everything should look cleaner and smoother. It is also highly suggested that a PS5 Pro would not force players to choose between any graphics or performance modes, but simply offer the best visuals at the highest frame rates by default. I will say this again. It is also highly suggested that a PS5 Pro would not force players to choose between any graphics or performance modes, but simply offer the best visuals at the highest frame rates by default. PS5 Pro might finally bring a feature fans have been begging for years. But first, yes or no? Are you frustrated with your PS5 storage size? Do you find yourself deleting games every month just to make space for new ones? I know I do. As a creator who records all my gameplay and installs games frequently to test and capture footage, I find myself deleting games every other day. So check this out. There's speculation that it might finally upgrade to a 2 terabyte storage capacity. This would be a significant improvement over the current 825 gigabytes available in the standard PS5. That's pretty exciting, right? Yeah, I know, we can buy extra SSD space from Amazon, but the fact that the PS5 Pro will come with extra storage straight out of the box is a bigger bonus than you might think. Now, an often overlooked aspect is the SSD speed. The PS5 Pro will not only provide more storage, but will also have an SSD that's about 10% faster. It might not sound like much, but a 10% increase can significantly improve texture loading, texture filtering, and reduce object pop-ins. You've probably heard the metaphor, the straw that broke the camel's back. Well, in this case, that extra speed can make a notable difference. I did some research, and while many other YouTubers questioned the need for a faster SSD, the benefits are clear. The faster the SSD, the better the performance in terms of texture loading and overall game smoothness. And if you've seen the GTA 6 gameplay trailer, you'll understand why we need that extra V2 model may address the most commonly cited issue with the original PS5 pad. Could this new model finally resolve the complaints we've had for the last 3 years? First off, the size and shape of the Dualsense can be a bit of an issue. It's bulkier than the controllers we're used to, which can lead to some hand fatigue during long gaming sessions. The grips are thick, and the analog sticks are positioned in a way that can feel awkward, especially if your hands are on the larger or smaller side. Some people have even reported feeling numbness in their fingers after a while. When it comes to build quality, there have been a fair number of reports about durability issues, like stick drift and triggers that start to act up sooner than you'd expect. There are also complaints about quality control, stuff like springs breaking. Compared to the more reliable older PlayStation controllers, it's a bit disappointing. These were hyped up a lot, and while some people, myself included, think they're awesome, not everyone feels the same. The resistance in the triggers can be adjusted or even turned off, which is great because not everyone loves the extra tension, especially in fast-paced games. Personally, I think the haptic feedback is a neat addition. But yeah, some folks find the resistance in the buttons a bit much. Looking ahead to the PS5 Pro, how could Sony make the Dualsense even better? Reports suggest that future versions will look and feel pretty much the same. Well, a more comfortable design would be a good start. Maybe they could offer interchangeable grips to fit different hand sizes, or just refine the shape a bit to be more universally comfortable. Unfortunately, if you're not a fan of the current design, it looks like it's here to stay. Durability improvements are a must, too. No one wants to deal with a controller breaking down quickly. They could use stronger materials and tighten up quality control to ensure the parts last longer. Plus, there are whispers about improvements in other areas too. Better speakers and a microphone could enhance in-game communication and audio feedback, and extending the battery life to around 12 hours, as some reports suggest, would be a significant improvement for long gaming sessions. From the included images, it's challenging to spot any visible differences between the Dualsense V2 and the PS5 controller we've been using. Even the packaging looks identical. If this listing is accurate and not an error on Best Buy's part, it seems the new controller doesn't offer any cosmetic changes. Does this mean the improvements are all under the hood? For instance, one theory is that the Dualsense V2 might feature even more advanced haptic feedback capabilities, enhanced actuators. There have been rumors suggesting that the Dualsense V2 might include a feature allowing it to deliver mild electrical shocks to increase immersion. While this concept sounds intriguing and could add a new layer of physical feedback, it's important to approach such claims with caution. If true, this feature would need to be carefully designed to ensure safety and comfort for users. A major concern with the current DualSense controller has been its battery life. The V2 could address this. It's worth noting that when the PS4 Pro was released, it was accompanied by a new iteration of the DualShock 4 controller, which included minor improvements. Now, the big question of the day. So, the PSVR2 hasn't really taken off as Sony might have hoped. The games are solid, the tech is impressive, but it hasn't quite captured a massive audience. Now enter the PS5 Pro. The big question is, could this upgraded console give the PSVR2 the boost it needs to finally hit the mainstream? Well, my young Padawan, grab my hand and let's explore these possibilities together. First off, the PS5 Pro is rumored to be a powerhouse, supposedly packing up to 3 times the processing power of the standard PS5. That extra oomph could make a huge difference for VR games. Imagine games running at a smooth 90 FPS. You know how sometimes in VR, fast movements can make things look a bit blurry or ghosty? That's often due to a technique called reprojection, which tries to fake smoother motion but isn't perfect. The PS5 Pro's extra power could reduce or even eliminate that issue, making everything look way sharper. Then there's the visual quality. The PS5 Pro might come with enhanced dynamic resolution scaling, which basically means the game can adjust the resolution in real time to keep things looking clear without tanking performance. Now, while the PSVR2 is the only VR system for the PS5, which gives it a unique spot, it's still up against some heavy hitters like MetaQuest 2 and HTC Vive. These other platforms have their own ecosystems and exclusive games, so Sony needs to really nail it with their VR offerings to keep people interested. But here's the kicker. If Sony leverages its big exclusive franchises, like maybe a VR Spider-Man or God of War experience, they could pull in fans who already love those series. However, there's a bit of a hurdle here. For the PS5 Pro to truly save the PSVR2, developers need to get on board. They'd have to patch existing games and create new ones that really take advantage of the PS5 Pro's hardware. If they do, we could see some seriously mind-blowing VR experiences. But if they don't, even the best hardware won't make a difference. In the end, the PS5 Pro could be the shot in the arm that PSVR2 needs, but it's going to take a concerted effort from Sony and game developers. But really, I want to know from you, what would make a PSVR2 a must-buy for you? There are also some case studies where they compared how games run on the standard PS5 versus the Pro. For example, one game that runs at 1080p and 60 FPS on the PS5 will be able to hit 1440p and 60 FPS on the Pro, thanks to PSSR. Another game that couldn't handle ray tracing at 60 FPS on the PS5 will manage it just fine on the Pro. Lastly, like the PS5 Slim, the Pro will have a detachable disk drive, which is a nice touch if you're into physical games. As for when it's coming out, they're aiming for November or December. Some people think that it could get pushed to 2025, especially since there aren't a ton of first-party games dropping this year. But I strongly disagree with this argument, as there is no evidence for that. And we'll know why later in the video. Sony does want to get it out before GTA 6 though, so you might need it for the best experience with that game. Now, you're probably wondering about the price, right? I'd say we're looking at something between $550 and $600 for the standard version. I'm leaning more towards $600. If they release a digital-only version, like they did with the PS5, that might come in a bit cheaper, maybe around $500 to $550. The reason it's more expensive is because of all the new tech they're adding, like better ray tracing and the new PSSR, that's supposed to make games look and run way better. Plus, the GPU in this thing is supposed to be as powerful as a pretty high-end PC graphics card, which obviously adds to the cost. But yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be as cheap as the original PS5. The world's a bit more expensive now. Plus, people will pay for those extra features, especially if they want the best gaming experience. So let's start with the signs of the PS5 Pro coming really soon. It appears that PS5 Pro dev kits are now in the hands of more developers who have been asked that PS5 Pro enhanced games be submitted for certification in August. These developments point toward a 2024 release, confirmed by multiple credible sources, indicating a fall 2024 release, specifically in November. Digital Foundry has confirmed the leaks about this upcoming console, adding significant weight to the rumors. We've seen sightings of PS5 Pro development kits, and Sony is expected to announce it around Gamescom or Tokyo Game Show. According to leaked documents, the PlayStation 5 Pro could potentially offer up to 4 times the ray tracing performance of the base model. Alex from Digital Foundry, a trusted name when it comes to tech analysis, weighed in on the leaks. He dissected the technical jargon and gave us a clearer picture of what we might expect from this rumored PS5 Pro. The big news is the introduction of a double ray tracing intersect engine. This sounds like a fancy term, but it's a game changer. Essentially, it means the PS5 Pro could handle ray tracing calculations way more efficiently, delivering better lighting and shadows in games. The leaks suggest this improvement comes from rDNA4's ability to double down on ray tracing performance, potentially giving us a 2 to 4-fold increase. That's some serious firepower. But wait, it gets more interesting. So, we know by now that the PS5 Pro will have a GPU equivalent to a 7800 XT, but the RT performance is potentially double of the 7800 XT because it got the rDNA4 RT engine, or something Sony custom. During the latest episode of their weekly podcast, the tech experts at Digital Foundry took a look at some of the leaked new ray tracing features that will be included in the rDNA4 architecture and will make their way onto the upcoming console, highlighting how some of them, such as double ray tracing intersect engine and BVH footprint improvement, could indeed lead to much better performance. The former, for example, will improve the performance of the intersect engine that is used to repurpose texture units as ray tracing accelerators to do the smaller part of ray tracing, which is also the most expensive. The latter, on the other hand, should improve BHV compaction, which is used to reduce the memory footprint for what a developer needs to trace against. As of now, on PC, NVIDIA benefits more from BHV compaction, but this enhancement should improve things on AMD as well as on the PlayStation 5 Pro. Unfortunately, this recent leak doesn't go into any detail regarding specific hardware changes and does not make any mention of traversal, which is an important part of ray tracing. NVIDIA and Intel, for example, have hardware that takes over the traversal aspect of shooting a ray through the BVH structure, which is something extremely expensive and that is notoriously bad on a normal GPU. A patent from Sony a while back revealed a traversal unit that has yet to surface in any PlayStation 5 Pro leak. so maybe the console will have new hardware that will further improve ray tracing quality. However, if the system really lacks traversal acceleration, then path tracing may be too ambitious for it. Older games with path tracing, like Quake 2 RTX or even Minecraft, could definitely run on the system, but more modern titles, like games powered by Unreal Engine 5, never could, no matter how simple they are. Since games will still need to run on the base model, the scale of ambition of the PlayStation 5 Pro is certainly limited. We'll do some Q&A answering the biggest questions, and then we'll get into the PS5 Pro controller leak. Comment number 1. Do you think the PS5 Pro can achieve 4K at 120 Hz with ray tracing in Fortnite? That's an interesting question. Achieving 4K 60 FPS with ray tracing enabled is likely possible. However, hitting 120 FPS with ray tracing at 4K resolution is a much taller order. It really depends on how the PS5 Pro's upgraded hardware interacts with the game and how the developers optimize Fortnite for the new specs. It's a bit of a stretch, but given Fortnite's massive popularity and ongoing updates, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Maybe we'll see more about this at the Tokyo Game Show or other gaming events. It's definitely an exciting area to watch. Next question, I will paraphrase a bit. Will we see path tracing on PS5 Pro? Path tracing is indeed a step up from ray tracing in terms of visual realism, but it's also way more demanding on hardware. Here's why it's too much for even the PS5 Pro. Let's define each one just for context, but you can skip ahead using timestamps if you want. So, ray tracing. This technique simulates how light rays interact with objects to create realistic lighting effects, like reflections and shadows. It's already quite demanding because it requires a lot of computational power to calculate how light behaves in a virtual environment. Path tracing. Instead of just simulating the primary paths of light, path tracing calculates the entire journey of many light rays as they bounce around a scene. This includes all the indirect lighting, which can involve multiple bounces off various surfaces, creating incredibly realistic global illumination. Why it's too demanding? The PS5 Pro, while powerful, is still fundamentally limited by its hardware. Path tracing requires not only a high number of calculations per frame, but also needs to handle a lot of data in real time. This means you need a tremendous amount of GPU power, a ton of fast memory, and an efficient cooling system to prevent overheating, all of which push the limits of what's feasible in a consumer console. Even on high-end gaming PCs, path tracing can bring systems to their knees unless you're using the latest and most powerful GPUs. These setups often involve components that far exceed the cost and power consumption limits of what you'd find in a console. However, it's worth noting that path tracing may not even be achievable on the PS6, believe it or not. Another question I get, and actually I get this a lot, is about my optimism. And yeah, I'm a bit more optimistic than others, probably because I do the research and my expectations are realistic. I don't expect the console to have super ray tracing in native 4K and run 120 FPS. In my opinion, if they show off the PS5 Pro and some awesome new games that will take advantage of it, I will lose it. My only frustration will be, will I be able to snag one early? Will the scalpers jump on it immediately? But if they don't show off a bunch of games that make me feel the urgency of getting one, I could hold off for a year until GTA 6 comes out. And I'll tell you what, I think GTA 6 will be the definitive way to experience the PS5 Pro. When PlayStation 5 was launched in 2020, the system box had an 8K logo that promised support for future titles with 8K graphics. But at some point in the last few months, Sony has quietly removed any mention of 8K on the PlayStation 5 boxes, and people have finally noticed the change. Sony's official site in 2020 stated that PS5 is compatible with 8K displays at launch, and after a future system software update will be able to output resolutions up to 8K when content is available with supported software. But to date, the only game that offers 8K resolution on PS5 is The Tourist, which looks more like Minecraft than a game with advanced visuals. The reality is that 8K has not been widely adopted by video game developers, or even by filmmakers at this point. There are 8K televisions on the market, but it may be quite some time, if ever, before it becomes the standard for either gaming or entertainment. I think this is one of the signs. Hear me out. What will Sony advertise about the PS5 Pro? When Sony announced the PS4 Pro, the story went something like this. Your PS4 plays games at 1080p 30 FPS. TVs are getting bigger, and 4K was becoming the new standard. So Sony said, hey, this PS4 Pro console can actually output resolutions at 4K and can play games at 4K, or you'll have the option to play in performance mode for a smoother frame rate experience. It sounds like an oversimplification, but that's how you advertise to the masses. You need to keep it simple. Now we are in the PS5 era. 8K was all over our PS5 boxes, but the PS5 can barely reach native 4K resolutions at 60 FPS, although we do have some games. Did you know that Horizon Forbidden West runs at 1800p 60 FPS? That's almost 4K. I'm still blown away by how good this game looks today. I still believe that nothing comes close to these graphics besides Sony's first-party IPs. Anyway, the 8K trend didn't catch on. We didn't really get anything close to even 8K 30 FPS. Now, I think Sony is going to bring the 8K gimmick back on the box with the PS5 Pro. Probably they will have a few first-party games that will theoretically reach an upscaled 8K at 30 FPS. That's probably not even going to be worth it, but hey, marketing, right? Another thing I want to clarify, and something a lot of people should understand, is that comparing raw power and numbers between high-end graphics cards and consoles is pretty pointless when it comes to gaming. Consoles are specifically made for gaming. The RAM and SSDs are tailored for that purpose. On the other hand, PCs running Windows are not made specifically for gaming and often need a bit of extra horsepower just to reach the same level of performance as consoles. Of course, I am paraphrasing a lot here, but I want to introduce you to someone who's more qualified than me. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mark Cerny, the architect. When making consoles, we're not trying to build low-cost PCs. I have been very surprised by the degree to which developers are using ray tracing, he begins. Putting that in, that was a big decision, and actually a rather late one. I thought that this is not going to get much use initially, but if we look at generations, and a generation is 7 years or so, software is created for 10 years. And so later in the life cycle, we will start seeing people using that technology. But instead, we had launch titles that were taking advantage of it. I guess having worked on games for consoles that were a bit difficult to get into, like the PlayStation 3, I can be a little skittish about very deep technology like that. But in this case, my guess as to how things would go was totally wrong, and I am so happy to have seen the early adoption of the technology. The other thing that has been surprising is the push to 60 frames per second. Based on previous console life cycles, I would have expected there to be a lot more games that are 30 frames per second only, just because the artwork can be so much more detailed if you have longer time to render it. Instead, the almost universal rule this time around has been the games run at 60. It's great from a play perspective. Gamers overwhelmingly prefer games that are higher frame rates. I just didn't expect such a departure from previous generations. Cerny says building a console takes about 4 years, and nowadays that's less time than it takes to make some of the big AAA titles. There is a lot of focus right now on the time it takes to build these games, and Cerny says that ultimately it's the developers that have chosen this path. And I see people asking, if the time to triangle has been greatly reduced, why is it then taking so many years to create a game? And the answer is that is what the teams are choosing to do. They are going after these massive creations that really do need 4 or 6 years to put together. One of the exciting aspects of console hardware design is that we have freedom with regards to what we put in the console, Cerny begins. Or to put that differently, we're not trying to build a low-cost PC, and we aren't bound by any particular standards. So, if we have a brainstorm, that audio can become much more immersive and dimensional if there's a dedicated unit that's capable of complex math, then we can do that. Or, if the future feels like high-speed SSDs rather than HDDs, we can put an end-to-end system in the console, everything from the flash dies to the software interfaces that the game creators use, and get 100% adoption. I like to think that occasionally we're even showing the way for the larger industry, and that our efforts end up benefiting those gaming on PC as well. It's a tech-heavy example, but on PS4 we had very efficient GPU interfaces, and that may well have spurred DirectX to become more efficient in response. Or to look at something more consumer-focused, I believe that releasing PS5 in 2020 with a very high-performance integrated SSD put pressure on the PC world to get their corresponding direct storage API into the hands of their gamers. He points to an amusing video by Linus Tech Tips, which attempted to kill the PlayStation 5 by building a $500 gaming PC that outperformed the console. They had to get a used motherboard, he says. That was the only way that they could build a PlayStation 5 equivalent for a PlayStation 5 price. And if you're using used parts, well, you can get a used PlayStation 5 for eBay for $300 something. I think as long as we continue to create that very nice package, the future of consoles is pretty bright. Why is the PS5 Pro a must? And why should you wait? And most importantly, where are the games that are going to take advantage of it? These are very good questions, and today we are going to answer them starting with, look at this game. I thought it was just a tech demo, but no, this game is actually coming out. Marvel's upcoming game.
Dead, we be dead. So what do you want?
Answers.
That's far enough!
Stay out of my way!
Stand aside!
I do not take orders from anyone!
I don't have time for this.
Neither do I.
Marvel 1943, Rise of Hydra is set for release in 2025. Developed by Skydance New Media and Marvel Games, it features Captain America and Black Panther, along with two other playable characters, Gabriel Jones and Nanali. The narrative-driven action-adventure game takes place during World War II, specifically in 1943, as the heroes confront Hydra's sinister plot in occupied Paris. The game utilizes Unreal Engine 5 for enhanced visuals and includes a talented voice cast, including Kari Payton and Drew Moorline. Rise of Hydra is leveraging the latest advancements in Unreal Engine 5 to deliver a visually stunning and technically impressive action-adventure game. The developer showcased to highlight several key features. Nanite tessellation is used to achieve near photorealistic visuals, allowing the characters like Captain America and Black Panther to closely resemble their Hollywood counterparts. Sparse volume textures enable real-time streaming and animation while reducing memory usage. Metahuman assets and metahuman animator tools bring the performances of the talented voice cast, including Drew Moorline, Kari Payton, and others, to life through high-res 4D scans and subtle animation. Motion matching, a new animation system introduced in Unreal Engine 5.4, enhances the fluidity and realism of character movements. While Skydance New Media has not officially confirmed the platforms, the developer has no known exclusivity deals with Sony or Microsoft, so a multi-platform release across PS5 and Xbox Series is the most probable scenario. A PC port is also very likely, as Skydance Interactive's previous games have all been released on Windows. Look, I love my PS5, but I won't deny that the console is aging, and I know Captain America won't run at 4K on the base PS5. Same goes for GTA 6 and Death Stranding 2. Still asking why we need a PS5 Pro? We're lucky if we can play it in 1440p. I don't even know if 60 FPS. Let's talk about Unreal Engine and consoles for a bit. Spoiler alert, they don't get along very well. It appears that current-gen consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series are facing some challenges in fully utilizing Unreal Engine 5's advanced features while maintaining stable performance. Remnant 2, one of the first major UE5 games, struggles to maintain consistent frame rates even on PS5 and Xbox Series X. The 60 FPS performance modes run at very low native resolutions like 720p and still suffer from performance drops and screen tearing. But in my personal experience, Remnant 2 runs like butter. Immortals of Avium shows image quality issues when pushing UE5 hard, suggesting Epic may have designed the engine around 30 FPS on consoles. Digital Foundry's analysis found that while the visual fidelity is impressive, performance can be inconsistent, with the PS5 and Series X often having to resort to lower resolutions or frame rates to maintain stability. The performance issues in the first Descendant on consoles, particularly the PS5, stem from several factors. Frame rate drops, significant drops, especially in large areas, even in performance mode. Bugs and glitches, stuttering, lag, and crashes affected gameplay across all platforms. High player counts, strained servers exacerbated performance issues. Nexon has suggested reinstalling the game as a temporary solution to some frame rate issues, but results have been mixed, particularly for console players. But if you've watched my dedicated video on this, you'll know that after 2 days, I already gave up on it. We're going to get back to the first Descendant later on in the video, where I'm going to prove another crucial point. But now I want to take you back in time a bit and tell you a personal story. Why the mid-gen refresh is a must. The PS5 generation has at least 4 to 5 more years ahead. My question to you is, how do you want to spend those last years? I had a PS4 Slim that I still own and love, but I'll be honest with you, in the latter half of its life cycle, I was struggling with it. The games took forever to load, texture pop-ins and frame drops were all over the place. For example, AC Odyssey had loading screens every time I entered a cutscene, sometimes even in the middle of a cutscene. Not to mention having to wait 5 minutes just to start the fricking game. I literally had moments when I booted up the game, and right before it finished loading, I changed my mind and didn't want to play anymore. Crazy, right? AC Valhalla ran like absolute crap on that thing. I was even wondering why they put it on the PS4 Slim, but you know if it comes on PS4 Pro, it comes on PS4 Slim, and I was looking at PC gamers with jealousy, wishing I had a PS4 Pro. Actually, I almost bought one, but then I thought, nah, PS5 is coming out in a year, so what's the point? Fast forward, and I bought my PS5 2 years after release, but I do wish I'd bought it sooner. Why am I talking about the PS4 and PS4 Pro again? Because history tends to repeat itself. We need a mid-gen refresh. There's nothing bad about that, especially when the consoles have a life cycle of 10 years. I understand why a lot of PS4 Pro owners didn't upgrade to the PS5 for so long, because they already had the option of 60 FPS on a lot of games. And yeah, I can imagine how bitter you'd get a PS5 and barely see a difference in God of War, Horizon, and Spider-Man. I get it, I do get that sentiment, but PS4 Slim to PS5 was a huge leap for me, and the most fun I had on PS5 is playing PS4 games in 4K 60 FPS. Fast forward to present day. Games like Death Stranding 2 and Captain America are coming, and they look like they mean business. Heck, Captain America looks like a frickin' PS6 game. And GTA 6? I think GTA 6 is going to look even better by the time it comes out. Don't believe me? Go back and look at the first GTA 4 trailer or the first GTA 5 trailer. Those trailers look worse than the actual game that was released. Looking at you, Ubisoft? Rockstar is one of the only game studios that actually releases games looking better than the trailers. And I can't even imagine what Ghost of Tsushima 2 is going to look like. It's an undeniable fact that when Sony shows off a brand new first-party game from Santa Monica or Naughty Dog, they are years ahead of what's out there and always raising the bar. AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution is now available on PS5. However, FSR 3 sucks on consoles. Compared to Nvidia's DLSS, FSR struggles with visual fidelity, particularly in complex scenes, leading to artifacts and blurriness. And I had hopes for this one. The first Descendant has this option. Digital Foundry made a review for it on PS5 and Xbox, and it was just painful to watch. They recommend, in the end, not to play with FSR and just go with standard performance mode. It only works if you have a 120Hz TVs. Even on those, it's not worth it. To further prove a point about how bad the first Descendant is on consoles at the moment, it's one of the only engines that drop the resolution on PS5 as low as 720p, on Xbox Series X to 540p, and the Series S to a painful 480p to 410p. That's insane. Now hold up, PC gamers. Put your champagne down. I'm not saying that PS5 cannot handle intensive engines. I'm saying it doesn't communicate well with this particular one. And I'll be honest with you, I'm really not that impressed with UE5 on consoles at the moment. To me, it looks inferior to what Santa Monica or Naughty Dog is using. Naughty Dog is using their own proprietary game engine that was first developed for the Uncharted series on PS3 and expanded upon for The Last of Us. Now that's the awesome part about PS5 Pro, because it won't use AMD's FRS. Sony looked at it and they were like, nah, we'll make our own upscaling engine, thank you. So I think PS5 Pro will be better built to deal with these kind of bottlenecks. I'm reading great things about this tech, and I'm reading even better things about the dedicated ray tracing engine. Some of is too good to be true, but in the end of the day, this PS5 Pro will be better built to deal with an engine like UE5. As we know, UE5 is all about nanite and ray tracing tech, and this is where the PS5 is lacking at the moment. Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the few PS5 games that isn't capable of hitting 60 FPS, but could that change on PS5 Pro? There's a chance that the additional graphical grunt of the PlayStation 5 could let Dragon's Dogma 2 run at a higher frame rate if Capcom is willing to put in the work. Running a game at 60 FPS has become the preferred option of many, especially as there are so many PS5 120 FPS games too. Dragon's Dogma 2 is thankfully an outlier when it comes to frame rate this generation, and hopefully the PS5 Pro can help it reach the 60 FPS standard we've all come to appreciate. Alan Wake 2 is an impressive graphical showcase on PS5, but it pushes Sony's console to its limits. As a result, it doesn't feature any ray tracing like on PC, which has a transformative effect on the game's visuals. What's more, the quality and performance modes fail to maintain a steady frame rate throughout, with image quality taking a noticeable hit when running the game in performance mode. Cyberpunk 2077 looks great on PS5, but it doesn't come close to the visual splendor that PC gamers get to enjoy. That's mostly due to the console version's ray tracing support, which only covers local shadows and is barely noticeable. Compare that to PC, where you can get ray-traced reflections, lighting, and path tracing, and it's like you're playing an entirely new game. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth offers stunning cutscene sequences that showcase the game's impressive character models and animations. These sequences are crafted with high attention to detail, bringing the characters and their stories to life in a visually captivating manner. One of the significant drawbacks is the inconsistent lighting quality. Some areas suffer from poor lighting, which can detract from the overall visual experience and make certain scenes appear less polished. In performance mode, the image quality can drop noticeably. This mode, to provide smoother gameplay, often sacrifices visual fidelity, leading to a less crisp and detailed presentation. This game will definitely benefit from PS5 Pro. In Star Wars Jedi Survivor, opting for performance mode can sometimes lead to a less than optimal experience due to occasional blurriness and frame rates. This can be particularly frustrating during critical moments such as intense boss fights, where smooth gameplay and clear visuals are crucial for success. Helldivers 2, touted as the best-selling Sony IP of all time, delivers a visually impressive experience. However, when the action intensifies, even in performance mode, frame rate drops can detract from the gameplay. To truly appreciate the chaotic battles and fast-paced action of Helldivers 2, a PS5 Pro upgrade becomes essential. What if I told you Sony is planning to launch a PlayStation handheld by fall 2025? What if I told you they aim to pack the power of the PS5 into the palm of your hands? And what if I told you it's going to be even more powerful than the current Xbox Series S? In the past, I was skeptical for the possibility of a new Sony handheld because it just never made much sense. The original PSP sold well enough, but a lot of evidence suggests that a large part of the success of that console was just due to pirating software and emulation, as opposed to actually being successful on its own terms. The PlayStation Vita was a disaster, and while many look back on the device fondly, it ended before its time, and it cannot be denied that the entire concept was flawed. Game development costs a lot of money. You know, it takes a lot of time to build these experiences, and you want to appeal to the widest audience possible. Why would you want to make a game for a handheld that's only sold 10 million units, when you can make a game for consoles that like 150 plus million combined people own, plus the PC? This is why Nintendo merged their handheld and console divisions, because it's just the sensible thing to do as game development gets more expensive. These are the compromises you've got to make. So, what I'm trying to say is that we might get a new type of console similar to the PS5, one that might function exactly like a Nintendo Switch. Imagine a PS5 S, but in the palm of your hands, with all the Dualsense features built in, just like in the PS Portal. Now, I don't know about you, but I've seen people online talking about how the new Dualsense controller is a gimmick. Some people, including my subscribers, have expressed their opinions on the controller, saying it's not as comfortable as the PS4's controller, and they deactivate the haptic feedback. But if you ask me, I think it's an amazing piece of tech. In the first month of playing with it, I was a bit iffy about it too. But very soon I fell in love with it, so I truly welcome it in the new PS Vita 2, or whatever you want to call it. So, to sum it up, when the PS5 first launched, it had a nice edge over a $1,000 gaming PC. But as time has passed, that gap has closed. You can now build a $1,000 PC that matches or exceeds the PS5's performance. But with the PS5 Pro on the horizon, expect another leap that might put it on par with those $2,000 gaming rigs. One thing I want to remind all of you is that Sony always brings the best first-party games in the second half of a console's life cycle. Just look at the PS3. It had a rocky start, but ended up with some of the greatest hits like The Last of Us, Uncharted 3, and God of War 3. The same pattern followed with the PS4, where the latter years brought us incredible exclusives like Spider-Man, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn. So, if you're feeling a bit impatient about the PS5 Pro or any major announcements, just remember that the best is yet to come. Sony's strategy has always been about building momentum, and historically, they've always ended on a high note with a slew of unforgettable gaming experiences. PC gamers frequently upgrade parts of their setup, sometimes nearly every year, to keep up with the latest games and tech improvements. Are they nuts? I really don't think so. It's all about staying current with technology that's constantly evolving and improving.